Defending Super Bowl champions started the season the way they ended it, in dominant fashion. Seahawks running game was unstoppable, led by Marshawn Lynch. 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. Lynch averaged 5.5 yards per carry, and it was his 20th 100-plus game. Percy Harvin, meanwhile, 100 yards combined for rushing as well and receiving. Let's listen to Russell Wilson talk about what happened.
We played a great game. You know, defensively we were lights out. Offensively, we were so physical, made a lot of plays. So many guys got the football. You know, our physical running game was definitely showed up tonight. We did a good job in the passing game, especially in the first half. That third quarter, we kind of slowed down a little bit for whatever reason. But we finished the game really strong.
The strong, to say the least. Stephen A., what happened last night?
The Green Bay Packers lost to a better team. They lost to a superior team. They lost to a tougher team. They lost to a team that appeared to have considerably more heart than they did. Whatever they did to the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl, to some degree, to a slightly lesser degree, they did to the Green Bay Packers last night, Skip Bayless, and it is just that simple. We will elaborate extensively on the play of Aaron Rodgers before this particular segment is over, but I will say to you that Marshawn Lynch averaging over 5 yards a carry, seemingly able to do whatever he wanted to do, not getting touched at all until he passed the line of scrimmage. That resonated. Percy Harvin being utilized. I mean, he's a wideout. He's in the slot. He's using him. I mean, everywhere you turned, you know, he was just making an impact and a difference. There didn't seem to be any concern that Golden Tate was gone. They were winning the battle at the line of scrimmage. And defensively, they were just dominant. It's just that simple. Eddie Lacy left with a concussion in the fourth quarter. That's not good news. Aaron Rodgers, a pedestrian, 23 of 33 for 189 yards. I said he's a bad man. Last night he was just bad.
Thank you.
He didn't show up, as far as I'm concerned. And again, we'll elaborate on him. Mike McCarthy, to me, dropped the ball as well. I'll elaborate on him a little bit later. In the end, the Super Bowl champions showed why they're Super Bowl champions, enough to almost make me modify my pick about who was going to the Super Bowl. I mean, the level of dominance that I saw last night, I said, damn.
It's too late.
Wait, it's not too late.
I'm not doing it yet.
It's not too late. I'm going to give you a mulligan.
No, I'm not. Don't give me a mulligan. Don't give me a mulligan. If I'm wrong and I have to eat crow in the weeks to come, I will. But I'm telling you right now, what I will acknowledge is this, and this is a foregone conclusion. We all knew this, because remember, when I talked about New Orleans, I'm thinking they'll get the #1 seed and they won't have to go to Seattle. We all understand that if the road to the Super Bowl has to go literally through the city of Seattle, Washington, that the Seahawks are going back to the Super Bowl. And I saw nothing to dissuade me from feeling that way last night. You just don't want to have to play there. You just don't.
I tried to warn you on yesterday's show when you tried to make a case last night would be a close game, and then you did not pick the Seahawks, but you did pick the Saints to get to the Super Bowl. I said, you know, the Legion of Boom is watching our show. They watch our show.
Yes, they do.
And you know about those forearms that they were just like playfully delivering to your head, right?
Right, that's right.
Yeah, so I think you helped contribute to their cause last night.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I doubt it. I think they would have done that anyway, but go ahead.
Here's my big picture takeaway from last night. At home, at night, the Seattle Seahawks are now the surest thing and the most unbeatable team in all of sports. Is that fair?
Yes.
Fair.
It's just that's what's happening. And I know Seahawks fans thought their conspiracy theory is that the NFL has tried to take away some of their home night games this year, because you remember, that was their last one. After this, they play 3 more night games, and they're all on the road at Washington, at San Francisco, at Arizona. So I think it's not a conspiracy theory. I think it's a reality theory, because we know how this league works. It's all about parity, baby. And the league is going to work to make it as difficult as possible for the champs to repeat. That's why it's so difficult to repeat. Right. So in this case, they're going to give them opening night at home. And the rest of the time, you ain't getting these gimme games anymore, because nobody can beat them
at home
in that stadium at night, especially at night, when you give that crowd the whole day to get ready for that game. Okay, now, in fairness, I'm going to be objective here. Obviously, Green Bay lost its right tackle, Brian Bulaga. And that Derek Sherrard, he just couldn't handle it. He had 2 big breakdowns that were crucial in the game. And the great irony of that game was your team that you said would play a close game had 1 shot, a 3rd down, that it looked like they had stopped Seattle on. And guess what got called? Defensive holding on the Packers.
Yep.
Not one time all night were the Seattle Seahawks, and everybody said this is the Seahawks rule, the way they're calling it this year. No defensive holdings, no illegal contacts called on the home team. There weren't a whole lot of penalties in the game. I mean, it was a pretty clean game compared to all those
the preseason,
the flag fests that were the preseason. So I'm going to give you those 2. But now, on the other side of the coin, if Earl Thomas doesn't muff the punt, with a little assist from Richard Sherman, who kind of blocked his guy into Earl, and if our guy Bobby Wagner didn't have a deep pass interference, I think those are some gift points that Green Bay got. What if you take those 2 screw-ups away? Is that fair? Then it could have been even worse than it was. And here's my scariest thought of all for the whole night. I kept saying that Russell Wilson through the preseason was playing at a Peyton-esque level. Last night, not so much. I thought he was a little off, especially his pocket throws. He wasn't on fire the way he was on fire in the preseason. He had the 2 touchdown passes, and they were both what I would call trick plays or tricky plays where you fool the defense. It was a better call because one went to the 3rd receiver, Lockett, the other went to the fullback. You fool the defense more than the quarterback made a great play, right? Okay, so he can play even better than he played last night. And then finally, let's get to rushing the football. Seattle had 207 yards rushing. You know and I know the question about Green Bay's defense coming off last year was, can they stop the run? Now, this team can really run the football, but 207, not a pretty sight. And you brought up Percy Harvin. I said yesterday he would be the comeback player of the year in the NFL. Yeah. Here's my takeaway on him last night. He just might be the quickest and fastest man in the league. But does anybody run harder and more fearlessly than Percy Harvin does?
No, they don't.
So you're combining,
we could tell.
You're combining rare quickness and speed with big guts, man. And again, it's almost to his detriment because sometimes he blows himself up. But does he not run hard with the football? You put it in his hands, and he's just like kamikaze running up through there with his head going first. And you say, uh-oh, look out, look out, look out. But he has got to be the most dangerous weapon in the game now, other than a quarterback, to me.
You know, interesting that we read this quote. Michael Bennett, who obviously had his way with Sherrod. He says, quote, obviously we were the more physical team today, offensively and defensively. I saw supposedly some of the best players in the league not want to tackle Marshawn Lynch. Of course, nobody is going to say nothing about that, but I've seen a lot of guys whiff on tackles that should have been 2-yard gains, and they're supposed to be the best. To me, that was a direct shot at Clay Matthews and those boys.
You think so?
I mean, I think so.
I thought Clay Matthews played pretty well.
He had 4 tackles, but what I'm saying is when you think about Green Bay's defense, who do you think about? That's who you think about.
Okay. So I don't think he was afraid. Maybe some of the other guys
when you make a statement like that, supposedly some of the best players in the league, and not want to tackle Marshawn Lynch, who else am I to think about when I'm talking about the Green Bay's defense? I'm thinking about him and A.J. Hawk. In the end, I'm not knocking anybody individually outside of Rodgers. For me, collectively, Green Bay is going to have a problem defensively. They're going to have a problem when teams out-physical you in the sport of football.
Yep.
That is a bad sign because that's a message being sent to everybody else coming down the pike who's going to play against you. And that's my concern about what I saw from Green Bay last night. I thought that to some degree their hearts got snatched out of their chest too.
And you know, over the last 2 years, their big issue has been they can't beat the Seattles and the San Franciscos.
Yeah.
It's been it.
Right?
Yeah. So they have a hard time.
Defense.
At this point, it'd be hard for us to say after seeing that game last night. Although I know you said you give him a mulligan, he's not going to take it yet. It's hard to see anybody can beat.
Maybe by the end of this show.
Can beat the Seahawks. I don't know.
Not by the end of the show. Maybe by the end of the weekend.
Stephen A., you talked about the bad man and said he was just bad.